Shall we talk about Dave Rubin?
Oh, of course. They wouldn't be the majority board if we didn't.
At some point, it kind of feels like punching down, and we've talked about this, right? Like, I think Sam and all of you guys here, even before I joined, have so thoroughly dismantled any credibility, any shred of credibility that Rubin had. That like it's just fun at this point.
Well, Joe Rogan
He's
says
probably the only person I can think of who wasn't deplatformed and had their influence, whatever it was, completely wane to like zilch, I should say.
He can no longer say, because it became so painfully obvious, I'm the last liberal, and I'm going to tell you why the Democrats and the left is so wrong. Now he's weighing in on this issue about Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, and I don't particularly care about what Chappelle really said in the context of a comedy special, but I do care about Netflix choosing to suspend one of their trans employees who had a criticism about what was said by Dave Chappelle. Dave Rubin has some commentary.
Tawe from Local says, we all knew Chappelle was going to be taken off Netflix since his first special because the woke left wants humor so sanitized. Funny is now offensive. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't even matter if you think what he's saying is funny. It actually doesn't. It's
Wait,
like,
press pause for a second.
Some people like some comedians, some
How can you say we all knew Dave Chappelle would be removed after his first special and not make it like and say that without ever addressing the fact that not only was it not removed, but he's gone on to have multiple more specials.
Exactly.
partnership.
Yeah.
He's got like 4 now.
Yeah.
Continue. Yeah, this is unbelievable already.
sanitized. Funny is now offensive. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't even matter if you think what he's saying is funny. It actually doesn't. It's like, some people like some comedians, some people like other comedians, right? Like, that's just how it is. But the point is, comedians, especially in a healthy society, a comedian must be allowed to say what they think without feeling like they're going to be destroyed after. Now, that does not mean people cannot push back. Of course, all of these employees, you're allowed as a employee to write a letter to your superior and say, that actually did bother me or whatever. But right now they're protesting outside of the building. It's like Netflix, Reed Hastings, other guy, fire all these people. Just fire them and go about making the best programming you can. But these people have literally had their testicles chopped off and they are being held by a radical trans activist outside of the Netflix building. There's some imagery for you. That probably offended somebody. Although cutting your testicles off is very in these days. That's like the new thing. That's like the thing now for these people, right?
Oh, these people. It's interesting. He gets.
No, go ahead, Emma. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, it's just, he wants to be in with the rest of the Blaze crowd so thoroughly that he's eagerly throwing trans people under the bus, even though he, of course, himself is gay, and you can be transphobic as a gay person. I'm not saying that, but it just speaks to the depth of his cravenness that he's so willing to burn any bridge of progress behind him. And no one's testicles were literally chopped off. Dave, who is currently advocating for cancel culture for these Netflix employees who are expressing their opinions about what their corporation is engaging in, and wanting them to get fired. I thought that you were so outraged over these cops and other nurses, for example, the tiny number of people who resigned because they refused to get vaccinated. That was the whole right wing's latest outrage. And now, are you advocating for people to lose their jobs over expressing their opinions about their employer? Damn.
Well,
why do you want to silence?
Let's move away from the hypocrisy thing of it, because this has never been about free speech for everybody. This is about liberal sort of bourgeois speech rights, which means that the speech of the workers is implicitly understood as an infringement of the speech of the boss. And so that's where we're at right now. And that's why all these people will never, of course, you can write a letter, but don't do anything that actually takes any more control over your workplace, because that's something that the right will not under any circumstances defend. And I think that's why, look, I think absolutely this anti-trans stuff in media. I talked about this last night, but I was just rewatching X-Files, and it's a great show. Episode 12 of season 1's called Gender Bender, and like the monster of the week that week is a trans person, and a lot of these same like harmful stuff was like just like mainstream unremarkable like 30 years ago. And so like I think while I personally don't like Emma said, I'm not someone who gets up in arms about comedy particularly when it comes with a workforce upset about the product that they're providing, whether it's Facebook or these Netflix employees. I support workers demanding more of a say over their workplace.
Yeah, that's the point. I went with the easy hypocrisy shame thing, but you're right here.
Yeah, I'd love to know where that rule is written that Dave Rubin pulled out, where workers allowed to quietly write a polite little note to their boss, not allowed to actually go outside and protest. Interesting. I wonder,
I mean, I want to
love them to forward me that.
I want to say this hits me personally very hard because Dave Rubin is my favorite stand-up comedian. And so I think that, for me, I would love to see a Dave Rubin Netflix comedy special. I think that there's nothing I would enjoy more than like an hour of watching Dave Rubin do stand-up comedy.
You're right.
But ultimately, I mean, I've only seen like clips so far, and I just need the full unadulterated like stream of it. But from my perspective, I think that like Dave Rubin has a two-pronged appeal. The first is that he like was banished from the left for being whatever, too like liberal or too classically liberal. And the second is that he's like, the Republican or like conservative gay person who like, goes on Ben Shapiro's show and like lets him make a gay cake joke. And so, this is also to remind us that he is still there to serve that role. But his influence has waned as the IDW kind of filled that like we're all just, unorthodox thinkers trying to have a heterodox conversation, and some of them have like doctorates, so they're just a little bit more articulate than he is. And second, that other thing that he said, I kind of feel like I'm not a big into stand-up comedy. Maybe that's why Dave Rubin's unique brand appeals to me. But this like idea that people have in their head that stand-up comedians are at the forefront of all kinds of truth telling. I was thinking about that this whole week when I was like, I don't know where that comes from other than like some George Carlin clips from like this 80, and then like people having like a idealized romantic version of like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert during the Bush administration. Because when you go on like Netflix, half the comedy specials are just Jeff Dunham doing ventriloquism. And that's all they've been for like a decade. But we still have kind of put forth this idea that like, if we're not constantly defending the comedians from the consequences or like whatever of like alienating people that might otherwise want to watch their shows because of free speech, that other people are going to suffer in some unique way who are already suffering. But yeah. I just don't think that the current demographic of comedian justifies them as any other. I mean, the current demographics of the comedian, like, stand-up comedian base who's most popular, justifies this feeling that they're just some sort of like unique truth tellers.
Right.
Honestly, like Dave Chappelle was back in the Chappelle show was funny, but like his insight into society wasn't like, deeper than you could get from any non-comedic person.
Yeah.
People just aspire, just too many people aspire to be funny. So they're like, oh, but if I can't be funny like this comedian, people are going to be mad at me. Then what's the point of trying to be funny? It's like, well, I mean, maybe you're not funny.
It's the conflation of the stakes, like that's going to destroy him, or it might cause some minor reputational damage, which might rebound and actually like advertise into a different audience.
I don't know if you saw the Katt Williams clip about like the idea of cancel culture and comedy when he said that like, if your entire career is like built on needing to make fun or like, alienate essentially one group of people who otherwise would watch your thing, then maybe it's not, maybe comedy is not right for you. But ultimately, I would say that maybe that's not true. Maybe comedy is right for you, but you have to be willing to take the punches as it comes from people who you're alienating. And the idea that you're trying to cultivate a very specific, very reactionary audience just has to be what it is. And it can't be, okay, well, it's everyone's job to ensure that like someone's stand-up dreams come true, because otherwise free speech is violated. It's like, if you want, I think there was an SNL writer, like if you want to have a podcast and have that, have that kind of fun, making those kinds of very niche humor jokes that rely on like breaking taboos, they rely on there being taboos that people are going to feel strongly about. And so you can't really have it both ways where like your humor is shock, but also everyone should be unshocked when you are doing
there's consequences. Right. Yeah.
And it's like he's not Lenny Bruce. Chappelle isn't being like booked into prison after he gets off stage, right? Like again, this is all about just, I think I have this Katt Williams clip. Is the one where he's wearing a cowboy hat. I put it in sound polls, Bradley. Maybe we could watch this one. But yeah, No, it's the 221. Sorry, I put it in after. But speaking of favorite comedians, Katt Williams is mine.
I'm not a big stand-up comedian fan. I mean, I just think that like that's the kind of thing that makes being online kind of alienating, because all anyone talks about is like stand-up comedy specials and whether they're the beginning and ending of the world. And I think that, yeah, like the popularity of any piece of media in promoting any kind of like problematic transphobic view is a problem. But then that just becomes framed against this idea that like comedians are the only thing standing between us and total like anarchy. It's just like, what?
You're right. I mean, and I'm still like what about like that kind of art? I think maybe gets people up in arms. Is it the fact that it's a singular person and there's that aspirational nature to it? Because there's plenty of art that you can like engage with and have concerns about, or I don't know, have critiques of, that doesn't inspire the same response that stand-up comedy does. I just don't. I don't care. It's not politics. It feels like some sort of cultural fight, but it's not even that.
I mean, I just don't necessarily, it doesn't appeal to me unless it's live. And so like watching stand up for me at home is not like appealing, but I think it's, you said, aspirational. A lot of people online have themselves, frame themselves as being like in some way that kind of comedian. Like, I'm going to stand up, I'm standing up on my platform or on Twitter or whatever. And so this is a battlefield that's entirely based on like, social status and social occupation and social class around like the idea of a public figure, singular one, not being allowed to say literally everything that they want to say, whether or not it harms people, whether or not it alienates otherwise, just specifically capitalist concerns, like it alienates the workers at the place or the people who might otherwise watch it. It's, it's more important that people be allowed to feel like, they're funny enough to one day be Dave Chappelle or something.
Yeah.
Like everyone just aspires to that.
Yeah, let's play this Katt Williams clip. It's good.
Judgment and repercussion from cancel culture.
If you ask all of the people that didn't make it to the NBA, if you ask them if we just lowered the goal down another foot, they will all tell you they'd make it. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes the out of bounds, but the out of bounds gotta be there or you'll run up in the stands, right? Mm. So some of these things are for the benefit of everything. Nobody likes the speed limit, but it's necessary. Nobody likes the shoulder of the road, but it's there for a reason. Mm-hmm. My point is, people weren't all that extremely funny back when they could say whatever they wanted to say. At the end of the day, there's no cancel culture. Cancellation doesn't have its own culture. That was people of color. That was us policing our own culture. That was people without a voice being trashed by people just because they had a bigger name than them and more money than them and a better office than them. They could sweep them up under the rug like they didn't matter. I don't know what people we think got canceled that we wish we had back. I don't even know who are they. Mm. It's done for the reasons it's done for, and it helped who it helped. If all that's going to happen is we have to be more sensitive in the way that we talk, isn't that what we want anyway? I'm saying your job as a comedian is to please the most amount of people with your art. So if you want to offend somebody, nobody took those words away from you. Mm-hmm. Dirty bitch ain't been taken away. You can say that, but don't call somebody this word when you know this affects all of these people. Don't use the R word when you really mean people on the spectrum. Don't say this word instead of saying autistic. Don't say this word instead of saying little people. Look, if these are the confines that keep you from doing the craft God put you to, then it probably ain't for you.
Your talent is there anyway. That's real shit. That's dope.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's not that hard to comprehend or even explain if you're actually like grappling with it from a from an empathetic standpoint. But I think a lot of people feel empathy for the person they feel has the most power and the largest platform in the situation. And then they go like, okay, well, I don't understand how anyone has the right to complain about what an artist is doing. Like the Emma said, it's the unilateral nature of stand-up or Joe Rogan show. But I think that comes from a very sort of like, neoliberal understanding of what it means to make yourself a brand and what yourself a business business, and some people have been, conditioned to believe that when you make yourself a business, when your business is just you have a right to take on all the personal freedoms that you have. Like, Katt Williams says about, you can say whatever words you want. No one can literally it puts you in jail for that, but people feel like once they've made themselves a brand or business, that should, also extend to their brand and their business as well. I've said before, I think that, people act as though once you're not allowed to say that, it's against the rules to say fire or yell fire in a crowded place, unless you're trying to do it to promote your podcast or your comedy special, then it's okay. Then free speech has to be extra unregulated, because the idea that you should be making money, the idea that you should be making lots of money, is just built into what our goals in our society are is built into what we frame our society around. So to sort of chastise somebody for doing what it takes to make that kind of money, I think rubs people the wrong way.
The individualist nature really, I think, strikes a chord with me, because there's so much in, I think, this current neoliberal climate, as you mentioned, that the only way that agency is achieved for so many people is through individual action and reaction, and so that's how we've been conditioned, essentially, to express one's agency, and that's maybe why the stand-up comedy thing has a bit more salience or resonates with people a little bit more, because we are so atomized, and the way that you feel like you're making a contribution is to kind of speak for yourself in a situation and express your discontent within these very specific capitalist confines. And so it's maybe that's what contributes to the heightened emotionalness of it.
No, I agree. I think people are very discontent, generally speaking, and stand-up comedy is a good way to feel good, when you watch it. And also, the idea of being able to voice your discontent, like a lot of stand-up comedians do, is very appealing for people who otherwise in society have bosses, have managers, have people who are, who they would like to express their discontent towards, but otherwise would not be able to, lest there be consequences. And so, that being framed as some kind of I would frame that as a reasonable concern, but that's just about people not being taught adequately how to speak truth to power and speak truth to the powerful people in their lives. And instead just, thinking, abstracting the idea that anybody who might come at a comedian for what they view as them expressing their truth or whatever is illegitimate, because they should have that right. It's like an aspirational right. People want to be able to tell their boss to fuck off, but they can't.
Yeah.
Write a letter, though.
Write a letter. Or get a comedy special. Then you can tell them.
Yes. Dave Rubin.
Yeah, make friends with Reed Hastings and you'll have free speech rights.
That's what he's trying to do right there, to get that stand-up special, but I'll watch it,
I don't think Netflix ever going to give him one. He's just not funny.
We'll have to he's not funny on purpose.
Bite your tongue, Matt.